If there's one message we're trying to drive home in these videos we do at Court Accountability and Legal AF, it's that we are the cavalry. The cavalry is not coming to save us. I started Court Accountability 2 years ago in the summer of 2023 after spending a long time working in the Senate Judiciary Committee. During the Trump years, watching as the Mitch McConnell and Trump turned the Senate into a conveyor belt for the confirmation of extremist, radical, pro-billionaire, theocratic judicial nominees. And all along, I was kind of looking around, looking at the Democrats, looking at the media, looking at the legal profession, thinking to myself, what's going on? Why isn't anybody responding with the urgency that this demands? And through those years, one thing I shook off was my imposter syndrome. A lot of lawyers suffer from imposter syndrome, like somebody else knows best. And that really infects Washington. It infects politics. Everybody, that's been around a long time says, this is how it works. You don't know what to do. And over time, I just started to see that these people that purported to know how everything worked and should work just didn't get it. They weren't thinking about their constitutional powers, their obligations, what they could do to respond to an engulfing constitutional crisis that predates Trump 2.0 by a long time. And so we took things into our own hands, driving research, investigations, working on the Hill, trying to support offices that are doing good work to drive oversight, accountability, and reform. One area where this dynamic is seriously at play is in the media, where mainstream media has had a stranglehold on people's access to information. And under threat from the Trump regime, which is attacking the free press relentlessly, we've seen the media really obey and weaken itself, capitulate to this authoritarian threat. And emerging from the ashes of a broken constitutional order, a broken democracy, have been a new generation of voices that have been able to break through, cut through that bullshit, cut through the idea that only these media institutions are able to deliver truth to people where they are. I'm so thrilled to be joined today by one of these voices, just an incredible sensation on TikTok, on Instagram, a comedian, a brilliant, incisive analyst of our times, Suzanne Lambert. Thank you so much for joining us. Wow. I mean, I've been watching your videos. They speak to people. You do makeup tutorials. You wake up, you stay up into the middle of the night to go watch hearings in Congress to watch that reconciliation.
I'm very irritated right now. It is 1 o'clock in the morning. I've had a very long day. All I want to do is go to sleep. And instead, I have to go to the motherfucking House of Representatives because House Republicans are sketchy as shit and scheduled a hearing in the middle of the night in order to talk about their Medicaid cuts because they know how wildly unpopular they are. And every time they have hearings during the day, there's a shit ton of protests because millions of Americans don't want to lose their healthcare benefits. Insane. So I have to go there instead.
Tell me about that. Can you get into that? I want to dig into that because you just showed up at those hearings.
I really did. I really did show up. Yeah, I would love to talk on that.
Yeah.
And that introduction. Yeah. So, I mean, it was such a cool opportunity, right? Being based in DC, if I get a last minute invitation to one of those things, which in this case was the hearing, I believe it was the Rules Committee for the Medicaid bill that they had in the middle of the night because it's a very unpopular bill. So that's when you do it, I guess. And if you're the Rules Committee, you make the rules. So it's kind of how that goes, right? Because I had a lot of people asking me, how are they allowed to do this? Well, they are the rules people. So they do kind of get that right, unfortunately. But no, it was so cool. I showed up at the Capitol at 2 a.m. Other creators had been there till like midnight-ish. And essentially we were all waiting in a big room, and there were members, House Democrats who weren't even a part of that committee, who still attended the committee hearing to show support and solidarity. Maxwell Frost is one of those. He's not on that committee, but he showed up. Stephen Horsford, I don't believe he's a member. He showed up. There were lots of members there. And then basically they knew that I, along with probably 10 creators in total, were in that room, and they just came by and talked to us. So I spoke with members, at 3, 4 a.m. doing interviews, which was one of the coolest experiences, I would say. I wish it was centered around a better circumstance and not a detrimental bill and blow to our country and our country's most vulnerable. But all things considered and aside, it was pretty cool to be able to have that level of access that traditional media didn't have. They had cameras streaming the hearing, I'm sure, but they weren't in there interviewing members. And it was really cool to get that opportunity.
And you don't, and I understand why sort of mainstream media feels obliged on some level to give each side air. But, far too often what we see is this completely reductionist both sidesism, where they're treating the rise of fascism in the United States as almost a normal thing, wedded to these institutional paradigms that just don't exist anymore. Bipartisanship, the idea of kind of, each side having valid points, even as they were lying through their teeth to take away people's healthcare access, funding for cancer research, food stamps, and the like. And you can just be there and cut right through that and speak straight to people. What is it about? What is it about? Your ability just to pick up a phone, talk to your growing audience. You have almost 1 million followers across platforms. 800,000+ subscriber or followers on TikTok. What is it about that dynamic that is so potent?
I think a big part of, for me specifically, is I try to create a two-way conversation, right? So I'll have opportunities for, I don't call them my audience, I really think of them as my community, where members of my community can submit questions. So it's a segment called No Dumb Questions. And then I'll have politicians respond when I'm going to the Hill. So there's a lot of two-way dialogue and community building that you don't always see with traditional media. And I like traditional media, right? And I think we should all be working together. I think that traditional media has the credibility that I don't always have in my role. And I think I have the community that they don't always have. And I think if we're working together and really working to our strengths, there's a lot of ways that we can complement each other in our approach. I think also for me, just being a comedian, I don't talk about things the way that a very brilliant lawyer like yourself might talk about them, right? I got rejected from all the law schools I applied to. Not that I'm salty about it or anything. But so I talk about things in a different way. And I think I talk about things in an entertaining way. And also, having been a conservative previously, which I've been super, super open about, I know how to talk to them because I know what they're hearing. I know what they're hearing. I know how frequently they're hearing it. So I do try to, weave in things there that I think will pique their interest, whether that's the way that I'm talking about things or if that's, objection handling, things I learned from a career in sales and in finance. I just think it's a different approach to what they're typically seeing. I try to entertain, whereas a lot of others on the left try to inform. Ideally, I'm doing both, but entertainment is always my primary my primary goal. Not to inform and just list off headlines.
Can take some lessons from you for sure. So I think something a little serious.
The informative people too, right? Like I should not be the last stop on your journey to learning about Medicaid. I really don't want to be.
There's a couple things you said in there that I want to pick up on. One is, first of all, the laughter and the making light of all this darkness, right? I think sometimes we even get feedback here. It's like, what are we laughing about? This is serious stuff, right? This is deadly serious. It affects all of us. It affects our children, affects our communities. And on some level, it's not something to laugh about, but we think about our work in the context of fighting authoritarianism, fighting fascism. And if we can look at lessons from international experiences, joy and community building, the stuff that you are touching on, absolutely vital strategy for building anti-authoritarian opposition. So it's just crucially important. And meanwhile, I think that's a really great recasting of, I said audience, but you're right, it's community building and having these opportunities to have that feedback, fill in those gaps for folks from somebody that has become a trusted voice in their life, to be able to get honest answers from someone they can really trust. And you can see, you mentioned your background as a conservative. But if you look at the platforms that they have built on the right, something like Steve Bannon's War Room, it has that energy, right? It has a community building energy. We might not like what they're talking about or what they're doing, but they leverage that community and then drive real political action such that what's really a fringe element of the MAGA right has outsized power and influence over the Republican Party generally. So I think we have that potential here on platforms like this, which, a set of brothers and Michael Popak at Midas just started putting together a few years ago and grew into this juggernaut. What you're doing there. What are you? One thing you mentioned is sort of like the back and forth with your viewers, your community. You're such a high profile creator. You've got MAGA folks in your mentions all the time, right? They're like giving you flack. You got people. How do you handle that? It sounds like you're weaving it into your analysis, but then how do you live with that? What is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, God forbid they get a real job or something that takes their time. I don't know. Honestly, I look at it with that kind of attitude because for a lot of the MAGA creators, and I actually just made a video, and I never respond to videos made about me. And my whole thing is I don't give away clout for free, and I don't give away free clout to Republicans. Or pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Isn't that y'all's whole thing? No one gave me clout. I didn't have any scandal to ride in on. I built my platform brick by brick, person by person. So I don't typically respond. And truthfully, my community usually takes care of it for me. And they'll kind of respond. But I look at it as like MAGA creators have to make content about liberal creators like me because they're just not, their content isn't performing that well otherwise. Despite the chokehold that they really do have on the media, their content doesn't perform well. I would say that their community, at least what I see on TikTok, is more born out of convenience than anything else. I don't really see the true elements of belonging and community that you really have to have for that kind of thriving ecosystem to exist. They just don't have it. So they have to throw whatever they can at the wall. So I think it's funny. I love being perceived. I love attention. I'm a stand-up comedian. So I'm like, oh no, not more attention. Whatever will I do? This is awful.
Yeah.
If it was someone aspirational, if Keke Palmer or who's another hero of mine, Adam Sandler, Molly Shannon, if they were making videos talking about like what a ugly, dumb loser I am, yeah, I might step off the internet. I might move to a remote location. But when I have someone who, can't form a coherent sentence, has nothing aspirational, or otherwise that I would ever want out of life, talking badly about me, I'm like, look, whatever helps you get that check at the end of the month, however small it may be, say what you got to say and do what you got to do. Because as a comedian, the worst thing that could happen to me is to get no reactions, right? A dead crowd I'd rather have a booing crowd than a crowd that's completely dead. So I'll take the good with the bad. It doesn't bother me.
I think that energy, that attitude that you're evincing there's a lot of lessons to be taken from it. There's a lot of lessons the Democratic Party could take from this because, having worked so closely with them, I think what you describe is almost like a microcosm of our national politics, where the Republican Party for decades has existed to tear things down, to own the libs. And far too often, again, wedded to sort of institutional paradigms about what people want to see from their elected leaders and seeking bipartisanship, I have found that establishment Democrats have been far too concerned about what Republicans are saying about them, whether it's true or not, whether it's intended to be destructive rather than constructive. And this is an issue you've, I think, touched on also, right? You've been a leading voice to drive Democrats to just like, come on, let's fight fire with fire, as you've said.
Yeah, I've pleaded with staff, staffers of members to be like, look, if they say this, it's going to be received very well. Because I don't want to post anything that's going to make Democratic members of Congress, who I support, anyway, especially for an interview, I don't want to post anything that'll make them look bad. I care about our cause. So I do try to give tips and pointers here and there. And I have had a few where I'm like, look, this is the kind of content that I shoot. If you want to just do the traditional, boring little interview where they're going to answer the same questions that everyone has already asked them, you can totally do that. But that's not what I'm doing. Take it or leave it. And then there usually is more of an openness. And I haven't had to get to that point very frequently, honestly. I think people, including members, and I think that they should be doing this. I don't think this is a bad thing at all. They are looking to us and asking, what does your audience want? What are you hearing from them? And because I have that community built up, I can show them, look, this is what they really liked when you said this. They didn't like when you said this. A good friend of mine, Jolly, who you might be familiar with, he posted a conversation the other day of a phone call that he had with Cory Booker that I thought was, again, like that kind of transparency that you don't really see. And you said something I would actually love to touch on. You said that you sometimes get comments, and I think you were alluding to the fact that I might get the same, where people are saying, well, why are you laughing at this? This isn't funny, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that mindset, because I do get those kinds of comments as well. Well, why haven't you talked about this? Why haven't you talked about that? I'm like, because I don't talk about everything. Like, I don't know. But I think that mindset is a big, that's something that we have to shift within our audiences and communities as well, because they don't do that on the right. They don't ask Joe Rogan, oh, why are you also talking about sports? And why are you also talking about, they let them be individuals who talk about lots of things often at once. And we need to be able to do that as well. We've all seen the studies. We all know what the stats look like as far as the left share of podcasts versus the right. Spoiler, it's not good, not looking good for us. So we have to be able to talk about other things. And I try to stand really firm in that with my audience, and I'll respond and I'll tell them, look, there are a million other places you can go to get strictly informative content about every headline happening that day, but that's not what this is. That's not the lane I sit in. That's not the lane I ever am going to sit in. So you have to also, as a creator, which is scary, theoretically, maybe I should be more scared of it than I am. It can be scary to say, no, I'm doing it this way, and this is the way I want to do it. But ultimately, I also think that's a reason why my community has grown so quickly, is because we need to be able to also talk about makeup and football and my favorite self-tanner. Like, we have to be able to talk about other things. I know you love talking about your favorite self-tanner as well, and that's a topic you've really been hit off.
I need to do the self-tanner.
So I wanted to add that because I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that is also a mindset that really needs to shift also within audiences and communities who consume this kind of content.
Yeah. Authenticity, right, at the end of the day. And faith in yourself and your ability to be the person you are, to read the English language if you care about birthright citizenship, and can read the 14th Amendment to see that it protects birthright citizenship, such that you don't have to sit on the sidelines if the Supreme Court is going to be kind of weird about that and try to argue that maybe no, it doesn't. Like, we have agency, we have ownership of these issues that affect all of our lives, and we can claim it. So maybe just as one last question, because I think, myself included, right? This is a relatively new endeavor for us. We're lawyers, we're researchers, analysts, oversight experts at Court Accountability. We've started doing this work with Midas. We love it. We love building this community here, but it's a little daunting, right? You say I'm a person, I have opinions, I pay close attention, I want to get into becoming a creator. I look at your account, you've got almost 1 million followers. I'm like, oh, that seems completely impossible. Not that needs to be everybody's goal, but
totally.
How should people get on these platforms and get active if that's something that they want to do as their part in the fight against fascism?
I love that. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that before, and it's a question I've been wanting to answer, so I appreciate you asking. I would say, one, everyone has a big gift. That's something I talk about a lot. For me, I think my big gift is talking about things in a different way. That's always, with comedy and with my content, that's been kind of my anchor. So I always tell people, sometimes the advice is think of your why. And my advice is actually from a comedy coach I had when I started stand up in 2018. And he said, what, can't you wait to tell them? Tell them that. Stop listening to the advice where it's telling you there's these like weird tools on social media platforms that you can go to, right? And it'll tell you where there's content gaps and XYZ. Stop trying to acquiesce to what you think the internet wants, and genuinely talk about what you can't wait to talk about. And that might be a really small niche of the whole puzzle, right? You don't have to go after everything, just like I don't. There's a lot of subjects that I don't touch, and instead I repost other content because there's other people who are better suited to speak to it for me. So I would think about, what's your big gift? What are the things you can't wait to tell them? And then just start talking about it. Like I didn't listen to any of the rules where it's like post Wednesday at 4 p.m. Some of my best performing videos I post in the middle of the night, but I posted them in the middle of the night because I could not wait to get that message out. So when I posted my Regina George liberal video, which kind of started really my trajectory, I was in Maine for my birthday. And I told the gentleman with me, wait in the lobby. I just need to get this out. If I don't get this out, I'm going to explode. Like, it's like one of those things where you just have to get the message out.
Everyone's getting on here now being like, oh, liberals need to be meaner. Democrats need to be meaner. Say less, babe. Do you know how many reformed mean girls have been waiting for this exact moment in time? I'm an ex-SEC sorority girl, okay? I have 3 brothers and an Irish Catholic mother. I know mean. Not all of us were meant to be Miss Rachel liberals, okay? Not all of us were meant to be Michelle Obama, Jack Schlossberg liberals. Some of us were meant to be Regina George liberals, Lucille Bluth, Principal Ava Coleman liberals. The gift that Regina George liberals bring to the table is our ability to be so quick with our insults, so scathingly precise, so accurate. They don't even know that's happened until it's over. They just sit there with their burnt orange nails, hand over their mouth like, oh my God, what just happened? But if we're really gonna do this, I need y'all to really let us do it, okay? Because when I made that video about that one I'm not a feminist girl, and I did mention her chunky highlights, some of y'all were like, oh my God, no, we need to support women, don't be like that. Y'all did it your way, and we're doing it our way, okay?
Right. And I'm so happy that I heeded that feeling. So I would say that. And then finally, and this is borrowed from Ina Garten, be ready when the luck comes. I had my podcast pitch. I had all the things fully built, ready to go, so that when the luck did happen, because it will, if you're posting about things you really, truly, honestly care about, you will have your moment. Your breakthrough might look different. It might lose momentum here and there. That's all normal. Be ready and know what you want, because all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of people asking you, so what's next? Have you thought about what's next? And if you can say yes, and God forbid, you have a few pages of a deck, because once you're a consultant, you're always a consultant, right? If you have a little deck pulled together, like, you are so ahead of it. And it already shows that you're really thinking seriously about your trajectory. So a combination of think about your big gift, what can't you wait to tell them, and be ready. Pull it together. Even if you feel like you're preparing it for an audience of 0, if things go the way you want them to, you will be preparing that for an audience of potentially millions one day. So just be ready for it.
Incredible. Suzanne Lambert, thank you for everything you're doing, for the energy you bring to our movement, to your community, for the leadership you have shown, the courage and bravery to put yourself out there. Guys, check out Suzanne's work. It's really incredible on her TikTok. We'll put the links in the show notes. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our work here at Court Accountability with Midas Touch Legal AF. And until next time, stay mad, stay motivated, stay mighty. Signing off.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.